In the fog-laden streets of Victorian London, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson face a case that entwines a priceless chrysoberyl chain with a cryptic riddle, a family curse, and a web of international intrigue. When a desperate noblewoman seeks Holmes' aid to recover the stolen heirloom, the detective uncovers a trail of deception that leads from opulent manors to shadowy alleys. With his unparalleled intellect, Holmes must unravel the chain's secret before a cunning adversary outwits him. Packed with suspense, clever deductions, and a final twist that will leave you reeling, this tale promises a 10/10 Sherlockian adventure. Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Summons. The autumn of 1892 draped London in a shroud of mist, its tendrils curling through the gaslit streets like the fingers of some spectral hand. In our modest lodgings at 221B Baker Street, the fire crackled with a comforting defiance against the chill. I, Dr. John Watson, sat penning notes from a recent case, while Sherlock Holmes lounged in his armchair, his violin resting idly across his knees. His sharp grey eyes, usually alight with restless energy, were fixed on the ceiling, a sure sign that ennui had once again claimed him. "Watson," he remarked without stirring, "have you ever considered the peculiar monotony of human ambition? Day after day, men chase wealth or power, yet how rarely they pause to question the cost." I glanced up from my writing, accustomed to his philosophical musings. "Perhaps they find purpose in the pursuit, Holmes. Not everyone thrives on unraveling mysteries as you do." He gave a faint smile, but before he could retort, a sharp rap echoed from the door below. Mrs. Hudson's footsteps followed, and soon she ushered in a visitor whose appearance banished all traces of Holmes' lethargy. The woman was tall, clad in a velvet cloak of deep emerald, her face partially veiled but unable to conceal the anxiety in her wide, dark eyes. She carried herself with the poise of aristocracy, yet her hands trembled as she clutched a small reticule. Hudson announced her as Lady Eleanor Haverford, and Holmes gestured for her to sit. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, her voice low but steady, "I come to you in a matter of utmost urgency. My family sixth heirloom, the chrysoberyl chain, has been stolen, and with it a secret that could ruin us." Holmes leaned forward, his interest piqued. "A chain, you say? Describe it and spare no detail." Lady Eleanor hesitated, then spoke with measured precision. "It is a necklace of 20 chrysoberyl gems, each the size of a quail's egg, set in gold filigree. The stones are a rare shade, almost cat's eye in their shimmer, passed down through the Haverford line for 3 centuries. It was kept under lock and key at Haverford Manor, yet 2 nights ago it vanished from a secured vault. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses, only this was left behind." She drew from her reticule a small card, which she handed to Holmes. I peered over his shoulder as he examined it. The card bore a single line of elegant script. "The chain binds, yet the riddle frees." Holmes' eyes gleamed. "A riddle, Lady Eleanor. Intriguing. Tell me what makes this chain so vital to your family beyond its obvious value." She lowered her gaze. "It is said to be cursed, Mr. Holmes. My ancestor, Lord Reginald Haverford, acquired it during a voyage to the Orient in 1604. Legend holds that the chain carries a secret, a riddle inscribed within its design that protects its owners from ruin. But should it fall into the wrong hands, the curse brings calamity. My brother, Lord Archibald, believes the theft is no mere robbery, but part of a larger scheme." "And your brother sits enemies?" Holmes pressed. "A family of your stature must have many." Lady Eleanor nodded. Archibald has made foes in diplomatic circles, particularly through his dealings with Prussian envoys. He fears one of them may have orchestrated this to disgrace us, but I know little of such matters, only that the chain must be recovered before its secret is unlocked. Holmes rose, his movements brisk. Watson, my coat. Lady Eleanor, we shall visit Haverford Manor at once. The game, as they say, is afoot. As we prepared to depart, I noted the flicker of hope in our client's eyes, tempered by a shadow of dread. What was this chrysoberyl chain, and what secret did its riddle conceal? I sensed that Holmes, with his insatiable curiosity, had already begun to unravel the threads of this mystery in his mind. What did you think of the enigmatic summons that drew Sherlock Holmes into this thrilling case? Where are you listening this tale from? London's misty streets, a cozy fireside, or somewhere far across the globe? Drop your location below and let us know what you're most curious about as the mystery unfolds. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the next chapter of Sherlock Holmes and the riddle of the chrysoberyl chain. The adventure is just beginning. Chapter 2. The Curse of the Chrysoberyl. The journey to Haverford Manor was a sombre affair, the clatter of our hansom cab muffled by the dense fog that clung to London's outskirts. Lady Eleanor sat opposite Holmes and me, her face pale but composed, as she recounted fragments of her family's history. Sherlock Holmes, his eyes half closed, absorbed every word with the intensity of a hawk, though he asked no questions, a sign he was already forming theories. Haverford Manor loomed into view as the fog parted, a sprawling edifice of grey stone, its turrets piercing the mist like sentinels. The air carried the damp scent of moss and earth, and the windows glowed faintly, as if reluctant to reveal the secrets within. We were met at the grand entrance by Lord Archibald Haverford, a wiry man in his late 40s, his stern features softened only slightly by relief at our arrival. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he greeted, his voice clipped with the cadence of one accustomed to command. "I trust my sister has apprised you of our predicament. The loss of the chrysoberyl chain is no mere theft. It threatens our very legacy." We were ushered into a cavernous study, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes and portraits of dour-faced Haverfords. A massive oak desk dominated the room, and upon it lay a velvet-lined case, empty save for the faint imprint where the chain once rested. Holmes examined it with his magnifying glass, his movements precise, almost reverent. "Tell me of this curse, Lord Haverford," Holmes said, not looking up. "Every detail, however fanciful." Archibald exchanged a glance with his sister before speaking. "The chrysoberyl chain was brought to England by my ancestor, Lord Reginald Haverford, after a perilous journey to Ceylon. It was a gift from a local chieftain, or so the story goes, but it came with a warning. The chain's gems were said to be imbued with a protective charm, but only if its wearer solved the riddle hidden within its design. Failure to do so, or its theft by an unworthy hand, would bring ruin. 3 times in our history, the chain has been stolen, and each time misfortune followed: fires, bankruptcies, untimely deaths. Lady Eleanor interjected, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our father believed the riddle was etched into the gold filigree, visible only under specific conditions. He spent years trying to decipher it, but failed. Now, with the chain gone, I fear the curse is upon us." Holmes straightened, his expression unreadable. "And the riddle itself? Have you any record of its wording?" Archibald produced a yellowed parchment from a drawer, its edges frayed with age. Holmes took it, his eyes scanning the faded script. I leaned closer to read over his shoulder. The text was brief but cryptic. 20 eyes of green, in gold they gleam. Guard the truth where shadows dream. Seek the light that breaks the chain, or bind thy fate to endless pain. Holmes folded the parchment and slipped it into his pocket. A poetic flourish, but it holds a key. The reference to light and shadows suggests a physical mechanism. Perhaps the gems refract light to reveal the message. Tell me, Lord Haverford, who knew of the chain's location in the vault? Ours Kane. Only Eleanor, myself, and our steward, Mr. Grayson, Archibald replied. The vault's lock is a modern design, unpickable, or so I was assured. Grayson has served us for 20 years. His loyalty is beyond question. Holmes' lips twitched in a faint smile. Loyalty is a fine quality, but it does not preclude error. I shall need to inspect the vault and speak with this Grayson. As we moved toward the vault, located in a subterranean chamber beneath the manor, I noted the tension in our hosts' faces. The vault door, a slab of iron with a complex combination lock, stood unmarred by scratches or dents. Holmes knelt, his lens tracing the edges of the lock, then rose with a thoughtful hum. No forced entry, as you said, he mused, yet the thief left a card with a riddle. A bold gesture, Watson, and one that suggests confidence or misdirection. We returned to the study, where Grayson, a stooped man with graying hair and nervous hands, awaited. His account was straightforward. He had checked the vault at midnight 2 nights prior, found it secure, and discovered the theft the following morning. Holmes questioned him sharply but gleaned little beyond the man's evident distress. As we prepared to depart, Holmes turned to Lady Eleanor. One final question. Has anyone recently shown undue interest in the chain servants, visitors, or otherwise? She hesitated. There was a Prussian diplomat, Herr von Stahl, at a recent ball. He asked pointed questions about our family relics, but I thought it mere curiosity. Holmes' stick eyes narrowed. Curiosity, Lady Eleanor, is often the prelude to intent. We shall return tomorrow. In the meantime, secure this manor as best you can. As our cab rattled back toward London, I sensed the wheels of Holmes' mind turning as swiftly as those beneath us. The curse, the riddle, the vanished chain, what game was afoot, and who was its master? Chapter 3. Holmes' First Glimpse. The morning following our visit to Haverford Manor found Sherlock Holmes in a state of restless energy. Breakfast lay untouched on the sideboard at 221B Baker Street, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of his pipe. He stood by the window, the parchment bearing the chrysoberyl riddle held aloft, catching the weak sunlight that pierced London's ever-present fog. "Watson," he said abruptly, "consider the audacity of our thief. To steal a priceless heirloom and leave a taunting riddle suggests not merely greed, but a mind delighting in its own cleverness. This is no common cracksman." I set down my tea, intrigued.
You suspect a personal motive, then?
Someone with a grudge against the Haverfords? Holmes waved a dismissive hand. Grudges are commonplace, genius is not. The card left behind. Fear the chain binds, yet the riddle frees sit is a challenge directed as much at me as at the Haverfords. Our adversary knows of my involvement or anticipates it. He moved to his cluttered desk, retrieving a small notebook. Last night, I cross-referenced the Haverfords' known associates. This Herr von Stahl, the Prussian diplomat, is a curious figure, a minor envoy, with a reputation for charm and an unsettling knack for acquiring secrets. His interest in the chain, as Lady Eleanor noted, is no coincidence. "Do you suspect him of the theft?" I asked. "Not directly," Holmes replied, his eyes glinting. "His diplomatic status would make such a brazen act risky. But he may be a puppet master, pulling strings from afar. We must also consider the Manorcept's inner circle, Grayson, the steward, and any servants with access to the Vault Sep's routine." Holmes then produced a small vial of powder from his chemical apparatus. "This morning, I analyzed a sample of dust I collected from the vault's floor. It contains traces of kaolin, a clay not native to the manor's grounds, but common in certain industrial districts of London. Our thief or an accomplice has been in contact with such a place, perhaps a pottery works or a warehouse." I marveled at his precision. "And the riddle itself? Have you made progress?" He unfolded the parchment again, reciting the lines with a faint smile. "20 eyes of green, in gold they gleam, seek the light that breaks the chain." The reference to eyes clearly denotes the chrysoberyl gems, known for their cat's eye effect. The light suggests an optical trick. Perhaps the gems must be aligned under specific illumination to reveal the riddle's solution. I shall need to examine the chain itself to confirm this. "But the chain is stolen," I pointed out. "How can you—" "Precisely, Watson," he interrupted, his voice sharp with excitement. "The thief Set's confidence implies they have not yet unlocked the riddle. The chain remains in London, I wager, and we shall find it by following the trail of kaolin and cunning." He donned his coat and seized his stick. "And Watson, we shall visit the British Museum Sips's gemology archives to research chrysoberyl properties, then make inquiries at the East End Sips clay works. The game grows clearer." As we stepped into the bustling street, I felt the familiar thrill of the chase. Holmes' mind, like a finely tuned instrument, had already begun to pluck the strings of this intricate mystery. Yet I could not shake the feeling that our unseen adversary was watching, waiting for Holmes to make his move. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Manor. The road to Haverford Manor seemed bleaker on our second visit, the sky heavy with the threat of rain as our hansom cab jolted along the rutted lanes. Sherlock Holmes sat beside me, his profile sharp against the dim light, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on his knee. I knew that look. His mind was a crucible, refining every detail from our prior visit into a coherent thread. The chrysoberyl chain, its cryptic riddle, and the faint trace of kaolin dust were pieces of a puzzle he was determined to solve. We arrived at the manor as dusk settled, the sprawling estate casting long shadows across its manicured lawns. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, and the windows glowed with an eerie warmth, as if guarding secrets against the encroaching night. Lady Eleanor greeted us at the entrance, her composure fraying at the edges, her eyes darting nervously toward the shadowed corners of the hall. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, thank you for returning so promptly," she said, her voice strained. "Matters have grown worse. Last night, one of our maids reported seeing a figure lurking near the vault. Nothing was taken, but the household is on edge." Holmes' dark eyes narrowed. "A figure, you say? Describe it." "She could not see clearly," Lady Eleanor replied. "It was tall, cloaked, and moved swiftly into the gardens. By the time Grayson pursued, it had vanished." Holmes nodded, his expression inscrutable. "Take us to the vault, if you please, and summon every member of the household who was present the night of the theft." We descended a stone staircase to the subterranean chamber, the air growing colder with each step. The vault door, a monolithic slab of iron, stood as imposing as before, its combination lock gleaming under the flickering gaslight. Holmes knelt, his magnifying glass tracing the floor and walls with meticulous care. He paused at a faint scuff mark near the threshold, barely visible to the untrained eye. "Watson," he murmured, "note this abrasion. It's saps fresh, made by a boot with a distinctively worn heel. The kaolin dust is present here as well, though fainter than before. Our intruder has returned, perhaps to confirm the chain sept's absence or to retrieve something overlooked." I scribbled in my notebook, marveling at his ability to extract meaning from such minutiae. But how did they enter without disturbing the lock? Holmes rose, dusting his hands. "That, my dear Watson, is the heart of the matter. The lock is a Harrington and Sons model, reputedly impregnable. Yet the absence of forced entry suggests either an insider SIP's knowledge or a mechanical genius. We shall see." We returned to the grand hall, where the household had assembled, Lord Archibald, stern and impatient, Grayson the steward, his hands clasped nervously, and a small retinue of servants, a cook, 2 maids, and a footman, all eyeing us with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Holmes paced before them, his gaze piercing, as if each face were a page to be read. "Mr. Grayson,"
he began,
"you stated that you checked the vault at midnight on the night of the theft. Did you notice anything unusual in the hours prior?" Grayson shook his head, his voice steady but strained. "Nothing, sir. The manor was quiet, save for the usual preparations for the evening meal. I locked the vault myself, and saw no one near it." Holmes turned to the maids. A young woman named Clara, and an older one called Mrs. Finch. "And you, Clara, saw this cloaked figure last night. Did you recognize anything, voice, gait, or manner?" Clara, a slight girl with wide eyes, fidgeted with her apron. "No, sir. It was too dark, and he moved so quick-like. I only saw him from the upstairs window, near the garden hedge." Mrs. Finch, more composed, added, "I's been seen nothing myself, Mr. Holmes, but the staff set's been whispering. They say the curse is stirring, that the chain set's theft has angered the spirits." Holmes' dexed lips twitched in a faint smile. "Spirits are a poor substitute for evidence, Mrs. Finch. Tell me, has anyone new visited the manor recently, tradesmen, guests, or otherwise?" Lord Archibald interjected. "Only Herr von Stahl, the Prussian diplomat, as Eleanor mentioned. He attended a ball here 2 weeks ago. Charming fellow, but his questions about our relics were persistent." Holmes' eyes gleamed. "Indeed, and the servants' access to the vault? Who else might have observed its routine?" Grayson bristled slightly. "None but myself, sir. The vault is off-limits to all save the family and me. The combination is known only to Lord Archibald and Lady Eleanor." Holmes nodded, but I caught the flicker of skepticism in his glance. He turned to the footman, a lanky youth, named Thomas, who had remained silent. "And you, Thomas, you seem uncommonly quiet. Did you see or hear anything unusual?" Thomas flushed, his hands twisting. "No, sir. I was in the stables most of that night, tending the horses. I didn't go near the vault." Holmes studied him for a long moment, then abruptly changed tack. "Lady Eleanor, show me the room where the ball was held. The setting may hold clues." We followed her to a grand ballroom, its chandeliers dimmed, but still casting glints of light across polished floors. Holmes prowled a space, examining the windows, the draperies, and a side door leading to the gardens. He paused at a window latch, his fingers tracing a faint scratch on the sill. "Curious," he murmured. "This latch has been tampered with, though subtly. A skilled hand could open it without leaving obvious marks. Watson, note the view from this window. It overlooks the garden hedge where Clara saw her cloaked figure." As we left the ballroom, Holmes' pace quickened, his mind clearly racing. "The manor is a sieve, Watson, riddled with vulnerabilities. The thief, or thieves, knew the household's rhythms intimately. Yet the Kael in dust points to an external connection, and Herr von Stahl's name looms ever larger." We returned to the hall, where Lord Archibald awaited, his impatience palpable. "Well, Mr. Holmes, have you any answers?" Holmes' smile was enigmatic. "Answers, Lord Haverford, are like shadows. They shift with the light. I require one more piece of information. The guest list from your recent ball. Every name, no exceptions." As we departed into the gathering dusk, the manor seemed to watch us, its secrets buried deep within its stone walls. I glanced at Holmes, his face alight with the thrill of the chase. The chrysoberial chain was more than a stolen jewel. It was a key to a labyrinth, and I sensed we were only beginning to navigate its twists. Chapter 5. Whispers from the Past. The fog had thickened by the time we returned to London, wrapping Baker Street in a grey veil that muted the clatter of hooves and the cries of street vendors. Inside 221B, the fire cast a warm glow over the familiar clutter of Holmes' domain, chemical vials, scattered papers, and the faint aroma of tobacco mingling with the sharper tang of some experiment left unattended. Sherlock Holmes sat cross-legged on the floor, the guest list from Haverford Manor's ball spread before him, his eyes darting across the names with predatory focus. "Watson," he said without looking up, "the key to this case lies not only in the present, but in the shadows of history. The chrysoberyl chain's curse is a distraction, yet its origins may illuminate the thief's motives. We must uncover more about Lord Reginald Haverford and his voyage to Ceylon." I settled into my armchair, nursing a brandy to ward off the chill. "You suspect the curse is mere superstition, then?" Holmes gave a dismissive snort. "Superstition is the refuge of the unimaginative. But legends often cloak truths. The chain's riddle, 20 eyes of green, in gold they gleam, suggests a mechanism tied to the gem's optical properties. Its theft, however, points to someone who believes in its power or seeks to exploit that belief." He rose, retrieving a thick volume from his bookshelf, a weathered tome on gemology. "This morning I confirmed at the British Museum that chrysoberyl, particularly the cat's eye variety, can exhibit chatoyancy, a reflective band that shifts with light. If the riddle's light that breaks the chains refers to a specific illumination, the gems may project a hidden message when aligned correctly. Our thief likely knows this and aims to unlock it." "But who?" I pressed. "Herr von Stahl? Grayson? Or someone else entirely?" Holmes' eyes gleamed. "Patience, Watson. The guest list offers clues. Herr von Stahl attended the ball, as did a certain Mr. Percival Langley, a collector of rare antiquities. Langley's name appears in my files, suspected of fencing stolen artifacts through London's black market. His presence at the manor is no coincidence." Determined to pursue this lead, Holmes dispatched a telegram to Inspector Lestrade, requesting discreet inquiries into Langley's recent activities. Meanwhile, he insisted we delve deeper into the Haverford family's past. "Lady Eleanor mentioned a Prussian diplomat's interest," he said. But the chain's history may point to older enemies. We shall visit the Haverford family archives at their London townhouse. The townhouse, a stately Georgian residence in Mayfair, was a stark contrast to the manor's Gothic grandeur. Lady Eleanor met us in a drawing-room adorned with portraits of her ancestors, their stern gazes seeming to follow our every move. She led us to a small library, its shelves groaning under the weight of ledgers and journals dating back centuries. "These are the family records," she explained, her voice tinged with unease. "Our father was meticulous in documenting the chain set's history, though he never solved its riddle." Holmes pounced on the journals, his fingers flipping through pages with the precision of a pianist. I joined him, scanning a leather-bound volume from 1604, penned by Lord Reginald Haverford himself. The script was faded but legible, recounting his voyage to Ceylon and his acquisition of the chrysoberyl chain. "Listen to this, Holmes," I said, reading aloud. "The chieftain warned that the chain scepter's power was bound to a riddle etched in gold and seen only by those who know the light. I took it as native superstition, yet the gem's scepter's glow haunts me. I fear I have brought a burden upon my house." Sept. Holmes nodded, absorbed in another journal. "Here is something more. In 1753, a Haverford ancestor, Sir Edmund, reported a theft of the chain. It was recovered, but not before a fire ravaged their estate. The thief, a disgraced cousin, claimed the chain spoke to him under candlelight. Delusional, perhaps, but it supports my theory of an optical mechanism." Lady Eleanor, listening, grew pale. "You believe the chain reveals its secret under specific light. But how does that help us now, with it gone?" Holmes' smile was enigmatic. "It tells us the thief sits intent. They seek not just wealth, but the riddle sits solution, perhaps a map to some hidden treasure, or a secret that could topple reputations. Your brother sits diplomatic dealings, particularly with Prussia, may be the key." He turned to a later journal, dated 1840, which mentioned a Prussian merchant who visited the manor and offered to purchase the chain. The offer was refused, but the merchant said's name, von Stahl, caught my eye. "Holmes, look, a von Stahl, possibly an ancestor of our diplomat." "Precisely," Holmes said, snapping the journal shut. "The past echoes in the present. Herr von Stahl's interest may stem from a family vendetta or a long-buried claim to the chain. We must learn more of his movements." As we left the townhouse, Holmes paused on the steps, his gaze distant. "Watson, the chrysoberyl chain is a cipher, not just of gold and gems, but of human ambition. Its theft is a move in a larger game, and we must anticipate the next play." The London night closed around us, its fog a mirror to the mystery's deepening layers. I felt the weight of unseen eyes, as if the thief or their master knew we were drawing closer. Holmes, undeterred, strode into the mist, his mind a beacon in the darkness. Chapter 6. The Phantom Thief. The moon hung low over London that night, its pale light filtering through the perpetual haze as Holmes and I ventured into the shadowed underbelly of the East End. Our destination was a nondescript warehouse in Whitechapel, a place Holmes had deduced from the kaolin dust traces and whispers from his network of informants. The air was thick with the smells of river mud and coal smoke, and the distant hoot of a foghorn echoed like a warning. "Watson," Holmes murmured as we approached the dimly lit building, "remain vigilant. Our phantom thief may be closer than we think. The kaolin suggests a connection to pottery or ceramics, perhaps a front for smuggling antiquities." We slipped through a side alley, Holmes' lock-picking tools making short work of a rusted gate. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of crates and shelves stacked with earthenware pots, their surfaces dusted with the telltale white clay. Holmes moved like a shadow, his lantern casting flickering beams across the gloom. He paused at a crate marked with a Prussian eagle stamp, his eyes narrowing. "Intriguing," he whispered. "This shipment originated from Berlin. Herr von Stahl's diplomatic ties extend to trade, it seems." As we delved deeper, a faint noise, a soft scrape of boot on floor, alerted us. Holmes extinguished the lantern, and we pressed against a stack of crates. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked and hooded, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. The phantom moved with purposeful stealth toward a hidden door at the rear. Holmes signaled me, and we followed at a distance, our footsteps muffled by the dust. The figure exited into a narrow courtyard where a hansom cab waited, its horse snorting impatiently. As the phantom climbed in, Holmes sprang forward, his voice cutting through the night. "Halt! In the name of the law! Reveal yourself." The figure whirled, dropping the bundle, which clattered to the ground. In the moonlight, I glimpsed a flash of gold, the chrysoberyl chain, but before we could close in, the phantom drew a pistol, firing a shot that splintered the cab's wheel. Chaos ensued. The horse reared, the cab lurched, and the figure leaped onto the driver's seat, whipping the reins. "After him, Watson," Holmes cried, as we gave chase on foot. The cab rattled down the cobbled streets, Holmes and I running in pursuit, our breaths ragged in the cold air. We dodged pedestrians and carts, the fog swirling like a living entity. Holmes, ever the athlete, gained ground, leaping onto the cab's rear as it turned a corner. I followed suit, clambering aboard amid the jolts. Inside the cab, the phantom struggled with Holmes, the two locked in a fierce grapple. "Unhand me," the figure growled, voice muffled but distinctly accented, Prussian perhaps. I joined the fray, wresting the pistol free and tossing it into the street. With a final heave, Holmes pinned the phantom against the seat, yanking back the hood to reveal Thomas, the footman from Haverford Manor. His face was pale, eyes wide with defiance and fear. "You!" I exclaimed. "The stable boy." Thomas snarled, struggling futilely. "You don't tend to understand. It stands not what it seems." Holmes's grip tightened. "Then enlighten us, before Scotland Yard does. Why steal the chain? And for whom?" The cab had come to a halt, the horse exhausted, as Holmes bound Thomas's hands with his own belt. The young man slumped, his bravado crumbling. "I didn't steal it. Not initially. I was coerced. A man approached me at the ball, offered gold to look the other way. He said it was for a greater cause, something about reclaiming a Prussian heirloom." "Herr von Stahl?" Holmes pressed. Thomas nodded reluctantly. "He sits not the mastermind, there sits another, Mr. Langley, the antiquities dealer. He hired the real thief, a professional cracksman named Blackwood. I was to deliver the chain tonight, here in Whitechapel, for safekeeping until they could decode the riddle." Holmes retrieved the bundle, unwrapping it, to confirm the chrysoberyl chain stick's presence. The gems gleamed eerily in the moonlight, their caddis stick's eyes shimmer, almost hypnotic. And the riddle card? The phantom sightings? "Distractions," Thomas admitted. "Langley Sept's idea, to stoke the curse fears and throw off suspicion. But I swear, I didn't know the full plan. They said no one would get hurt." Holmes's expression was stern. "Ambition blinds, young man. You entangled yourself in a web that spans continents. Watson, summon a constable. We shall deliver this stephantum sept to Lestrade. As we waited for the police, Holmes examined the chain closely, holding it up to the cabset's lantern. See here, Watson, the filigree. Under angled light, faint etchings appear. The riddle is literal. The fillet that breaks the chain sept reveals inscribed words on the gold links. I peered closer, discerning tiny symbols that formed a cryptic message, but before I could decipher it, Holmes pocketed the chain. Not here. Safety first. Thomas Sitt's confession points to Langley as the orchestrator, with von Stahl as the beneficiary. We must confront them before they flee. The night's chase had yielded the chain, but the mystery deepened. As the constable arrived and carted Thomas away, I sensed the phantom thief was but a pawn in a grander scheme, one that Holmes was only beginning to unravel. Chapter 7. Deceptive Alliances. The interrogation room at Scotland Yard was a stark contrast to the opulent halls of Haverford Manor, a dimly lit chamber with bare walls and the faint echo of distant footsteps. Thomas, the captured footman, sat hunched under the gaze of Inspector Lestrade, who paced with his usual mix of skepticism and grudging respect for Holmes' methods. Sherlock Holmes leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, while I stood nearby, notebook in hand, ready to record the unfolding revelations. "All right, lad," Lestrade growled. "You sung a tune about Langley and von Stahl. Now, give us the full score. How deep does this go?" Thomas, his defiance worn thin by the night's events, sighed heavily. "It started at the ball. Mr. Langley approached me in the gardens, said he knew of my gambling debts, offered to clear them if I provided details about the vault's security. I thought it harmless until he demanded I help smuggle the chain out. Blackwood, the cracksman, did the actual theft. He's a ghost in the trade, slips locks like water through fingers." Holmes interjected smoothly. "And von Stahl, what is his role in this alliance?" Thomas glanced up, wary. "Langley mentioned him as the buyer, said the Prussian wants the chain for its historical claim, something about his family losing it centuries ago in a trade dispute. Von Stahl provided the funds and the distraction at the ball, asking questions to gauge the family's vigilance." Lestrade snorted. "A diplomat fencing stolen goods? Bold claim, Holmes. We can just haul in a Prussian envoy without evidence." Holmes' eyes sparkled. "Evidence we shall have, Inspector. Thomas, where was the chain to be delivered after tonight?" "Auction house in Mayfair," Thomas muttered. "Langley runs a discreet sale tomorrow night for select collectors." The chain was to be the Star lot disguised as a sate-replica sect until the riddle was solved. Holmes nodded, turning to Lestrade. "There, sit to your opportunity. Infiltrate the auction, catch Langley in the act. But tread carefully. Von Stahl may attend, and his diplomatic immunity complicates matters." As we left Scotland Yard, the dawn light pierced the fog, casting London in a hazy glow. Holmes was silent during our cab ride back to Baker Street, his mind clearly weaving the threads together. Once home, he spread the chrysoberyl chain across his desk, angling a lamp to illuminate its gems. The cat's eye shimmer danced, and under the focused light, faint etchings emerged on the gold filigree, tiny symbols forming words. "See here, Watson," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "The riddle unlocks thus. Aligning the gems under direct light reveals a message. It reads, 'Beneath the lion's gaze, where rivers meet, the Haverford fortune lies concealed.' a treasure map of sorts, pointing to a location, likely the confluence of rivers near the family's original estate. I leaned in, fascinated. So the chain isn't said just valuable for its gems, but for this secret, the curse was a myth to protect a hidden wealth. Precisely, Holmes replied. Lord Reginald must have hidden riches acquired in Ceylon, using the chain as the key. Our thieves seek not the necklace alone, but the fortune it guards. Langley and von Stahl have formed a deceptive alliance. Langley for the profit, von Stahl for ancestral reclamation. Determined to expose them, Holmes devised a plan. We shall attend the auction incognito. You, Watson, as a wealthy collector, I as your eccentric advisor. Lestrade will position men outside for the arrest. The auction house, a discreet venue tucked behind a Mayfair facade, buzzed with veiled intrigue that evening. Gentlemen in top hats and ladies in silks mingled, their whispers hinting at the illicit nature of the lots. Disguised with a false moustache and spectacles, Holmes scanned the room while I feigned interest in a display of ancient coins. There, Holmes murmured, nodding toward a portly man with a monocle, Percival Langley. Nearby, Herr von Stahl conversed in low tones, his Prussian accent cutting through the hum. As the auction commenced, the chrysoberial chain was presented as a masterful reproduction of a legendary artifact. Bidding started briskly, but Holmes leaned forward, whispering to me, "Observe von Stahl." He bid subtly, through a proxy. The tension mounted as bids climbed. Suddenly, Holmes rose, his voice disguised with a Scottish burr. "I demand inspection. That sips no replica. It sips the genuine Haverford chain." Chaos erupted. Langley paled, von Stahl froze, and the room fell silent. Lestrade Sitz's men burst in, but von Stahl shouted, "Diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch me." Holmes smiled coldly. "Immunity protects you from arrest, Herr von Stahl, but not from exposure. Langley, however, enjoys no such shield. Confess, man, the alliance, the theft, the Riddlesip's secret." Langley, cornered, crumbled. It was von Stahl Sitz's idea. He claimed the chain was stolen from his ancestors by Reginald Haverford. We hired Blackwood to retrieve it, using Thomas as the insider. The riddle leads to a fortune. We plan to split it. Von Stahl sneered. "Lies. I merely sought to purchase a family heirloom." But Holmes produced the etched message, projected via a lantern slide for all to see. "The fortune is Haverford property, Herr. Your alliance ends here." As Lestrade arrested Langley and his accomplices, Blackwood was apprehended fleeing the back. Von Stahl slipped away, his diplomatic status a temporary shield. Yet Holmes had wired the Foreign Office, ensuring his expulsion. Back at Baker Street, Holmes lit his pipe, satisfaction evident. Deceptive alliances unravel under scrutiny, Watson. But mark my words, this is not the end. Von Stahl Sitz's grudge runs deep, and the Riddlesip's treasure remains hidden. The night deepened, but the mystery lingered. Its alliances exposed, yet its final secret still shrouded. Chapter 8. The Riddle Unfurls. The morning after the chaotic auction, Baker Street was a haven of quiet intensity. Sherlock Holmes sat at his desk, the chrysoberial chain draped before him like a serpent of gold and green, its gems catching the sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. I entered the room to find him hunched over it, a magnifying glass in one hand and a small prism in the other, manipulating light beams with the precision of a scientist. "Watson," he said, Without glancing up, the riddle unfurls at last. Observe how the cat-sit's eye effect in the chrysoberyls acts as a lens. When aligned under polarized light, such as through this prism, the etchings on the filigree become a coherent message. I drew closer, peering through the prism as he directed. What had seemed like random scratches resolved into elegant script, weaving around the links beneath the lion's gaze. Where rivers meet, the Haverford fortune lies concealed. Seek the stone that roars, in silence deep, where Thames and Fleet entwine their sleep. Remarkable, I breathed. A treasure map, encoded in the chain itself. The Whodunit set's gaze sets. Could it refer to a statue or landmark? Holmes nodded, his eyes alight. Precisely. The lion likely alludes to the stone lions at the base of Traitor's Gate, near where the River Fleet once met the Thames before it was buried underground. Lord Reginald, returning from Ceylon, must have hidden his ill-gotten gains there, perhaps spices, jewels, or gold amassed through dubious means. The curse was a fabrication to deter thieves, but the riddle ensures only a worthy Haverford could claim it. But why hide it at all? I asked, settling into a chair. Fear of reprisal, Holmes replied. Reginald Sipp's journal hints at a disputed acquisition, the chain and fortune taken from a Ceylonese temple, or so von Stahl Sipp's ancestral claim suggests. He secreted the wealth in London, encoding the location in the chain for his heirs. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mrs. Hudson announced Lady Eleanor and Lord Archibald Haverford. They entered, faces etched with a mix of hope and anxiety. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened at the sight of the chain. "You recovered it," she exclaimed. "Mr. Holmes, we are eternally grateful." Holmes waved a hand. "Gratitude is premature. The chain is safe, but its secret demands resolution. Behold the unfurled riddle." He demonstrated the prism technique, projecting the message onto a white sheet for clarity. Lord Archibald read it aloud, his voice trembling. "The fortune, it exists. Father always dismissed it as legend." "No legend, but clever concealment," Holmes said. "We must excavate the site tonight, under cover of darkness, to claim it before von Stahl or remnants of Langley Sipp's network interfere. Lestrade has Langley in custody, but von Stahl, shielded by diplomacy, may yet act through proxies." Lord Archibald straightened. "Then let us proceed. The Haverford legacy must be secured." That evening, under a moonless sky, our party assembled near Tower Bridge. The Thames lapped lazily against the ancient stones, and the buried Fleet's subterranean rumble echoed faintly. Holmes, equipped with lanterns and tools, led us to Traitor's Gate, where weathered lion statues guarded the entrance, their gazes fixed eternally on the water. "Here," Holmes directed, pointing to a moss-covered slab beneath one lion Sipp's paw. "The set stone that roars sits, a play on the lion Sipp's silent roar. Watson, assist with the pry bar." We labored in the shadows, the fog muffling our efforts, but a slab yielded with a groan, revealing a narrow shaft descending into darkness. Holmes lowered a lantern, illuminating a chamber below, damp walls lined with chests, their lids encrusted with age. "Eureka!" Holmes murmured, "the fortune intact." As we descended via rope ladder, the air grew musty, heavy with the scent of decay. The chests contained wonders, sacks of uncut gems, gold ingots stamped with exotic seals, and rolls of ancient silk. Lady Eleanor gasped, touching a chest reverently. "Our family sits salvation," she whispered. "With this we can settle debts and restore the manor." But Holmes' expression darkened. He knelt, examining a fresh footprint in the dust, too recent for centuries of seclusion. We are not alone. Someone has been here recently. A rustle from the shadows confirmed his warning. A figure emerged, Herr von Stahl, pistol in hand, flanked by two burly henchmen, his face twisted in triumph. "Mr. Holmes," he sneered, his accent thick. "You, Sepp, led me straight to it. The chain Sepp's riddle was the final piece, my family Sepp's rightful inheritance, stolen by Reginald Haverford from our allied merchants in Ceylon." Holmes remained calm, his voice steady. "Rightful. Your ancestors were complicit in colonial plunder. This fortune belongs to the Haverfords by possession, if not morality." Von Stahl laughed coldly. "Possession is fleeting. Hand over the chain, and perhaps I still let you leave." Tension crackled as we faced off in the dim chamber. I reached for my revolver, but Holmes stayed my hand. "No need for violence, Herr. Observe the walls, unstable after centuries. A single shot could bring the roof down." Von Stahl hesitated, his eyes flicking upward. In that moment, Holmes sprang, disarming one henchman with a swift baritsu maneuver. Chaos ensued. I grappled with the second, while Lord Archibald shielded his sister. Punches flew, grunts echoed, until Holmes subdued Von Stahl, binding him with rope from our kit. "Lestrade awaits above," Holmes said, signaling with a whistle. Yard men descended, arresting the intruders. Von Stahl spat curses, but his diplomatic shield cracked under the weight of attempted murder and trespass. As we emerged into the night, chests in tow, Holmes pocketed the chain. The riddle unfurls, and with it, justice. But remember, Watson, the true treasure is knowledge, not gold. The Haverford's gratitude was profound, but as we parted, I sensed Holmes' mind already drifting to the next enigma. The chain's secret was revealed, yet London's shadows held endless riddles. Chapter 9. Betrayal in the Fog. The fog rolled in thick from the Thames the following evening, transforming London's streets into a labyrinth of muted shapes and echoing sounds. Sherlock Holmes and I had returned to Baker Street after securing the Haverford fortune in a bank vault, the chrysoberyl chain safely locked in Holmes' desk drawer. Yet victory felt incomplete. Holmes paced the room, his pipe trailing wisps of smoke that mingled with the encroaching mist outside. "Watson," he said abruptly, halting by the window, "betrayal is the sharpest blade, for it strikes from trusted hands. Von Stahlsitz's capture was too neat, his henchmen too easily subdued. I suspect a deeper treachery, one that facilitated his knowledge of the Riddlesitz site." I looked up from my notes, puzzled. But we unfurled the riddle ourselves. Holmes, how could he have known the location unless an insider fed him the details? Holmes finished, his eyes sharp. Recall Grayson, the steward, his nervous demeanor, his unchallenged access to the vault. Or perhaps Thomas, the footman, revealed more under interrogation than we heard. We must revisit Haverford Manor under cover of this fog. Reluctant, but intrigued, I donned my coat and we set out into the night. The cab ride was eerie, the horses' hooves clopping softly on the damp cobbles, visibility reduced to mere yards. Holmes was silent, his mind doubtless sifting through clues like a miner panning for gold. We alighted a short distance from the manor, approaching on foot to avoid detection. The estate loomed like a ghost. its outlines blurred, lights flickering faintly through the haze. Holmes led us to the garden hedge where Clara had spotted the phantom figure nights before. He knelt, examining the ground with his lantern shielded. "Fresh footprints," he whispered, leading toward the side entrance. "Someone has come and gone recently, boots matching those in the treasure chamber." We slipped through a servant's door, the manor's interior hushed save for the distant tick of a clock. Holmes moved with cat-like stealth, guiding us toward the study. Voices murmured from within, low, urgent tones that froze us in place. "The fortune is secured, but Holmes suspects nothing," said Lord Archibald, his voice unmistakable. "You played your part well, Grayson. The payment from von Stahl will arrive once he's freed." Grayson VI's reply was obsequious. "As agreed, my lord. But what of the chain? Its riddle led us to the treasure. Surely we can claim it all now." My heart sank. Betrayal from within the family. Holmes' hand on my arm steadied me as we listened. Archibald chuckled darkly. "The treasure is Haverford birthright, but von Stahl's claim forced my hand. I orchestrated the theft to draw him out, using Langley as a pawn. Thomas was my unwitting tool, and you, Grayson, my faithful executor. With von Stahl arrested, the fortune is ours alone. No need to share with that Prussian upstart." The revelation stunned me. Holmes' ascetic expression hardened, a mix of triumph and disdain. He burst into the room, revolver drawn. "A masterful deception, Lord Haverford. But betrayal in the fog reveals itself to those who peer closely." Archibald whirled, his face ashen, Grayson stumbling back in alarm. "The kaolin dust was a deliberate plant," Holmes said coldly, "traced to your own pottery investments in the East End. Thomas's confession omitted your involvement, but his hesitation spoke volumes. You staged the theft to expose von Stahl's plot, intending to reclaim the treasure while eliminating rivals. The riddle card? Your taunt to lure him." Archibald Stitt's defiance crumbled. "It was necessary. Von Stahl threatened ruin. His family's ancient grudge would have bankrupted us through scandals. I hired Blackwood via Langley. Left clues for you to follow, knowing you unravel it and trap him." Grayson, sweating, interjected. "My lord promised me a share for my silence and aid." Holmes shook his head. "To greed begets betrayal. Watson, summon Lestrade. We have a nobleman to charge with conspiracy and fraud." As I moved to the door, Archibald lunged for a hidden drawer, drawing a pistol. "You still not take me, Holmes?" A scuffle ensued. Holmes dodged the shot, which shattered a vase, and I tackled Archibald, wrestling the weapon free. Grayson fled into the hall, but Holmes pursued, subduing him with a precise blow. Lady Eleanor appeared at the commotion, her face pale with shock. "Archibald! Archibald! What madness is this?" Her brother, bound and defeated, hung his head. "For the family, Eleanor, all for the family." Lestrade arrived swiftly, his men carting away the traitors. Eleanor, tears streaming, thanked Holmes profusely. "You saved us from ruin, and from ourselves." As we departed into the lifting fog, Holmes lit his pipe. "Betrayal, Watson. Clouds judgment like this mist, but truth like dawn inevitably clears it." The streets emerged clearer, but the case's layers peeled back to reveal human frailty at its core. Yet I knew Holmes' mind already hungered for the next puzzle in London's endless enigma. Chapter 10. The Auction Intrigue. The revelation of Lord Archibald's treachery left a bitter aftertaste. But Sherlock Holmes was not one to dwell on moral failings when a case remained unresolved. The chrysoberyl chain, now back in our possession, rested securely at Baker Street, its riddle solved but its implications far from settled. Holmes suspected that Percival Langley, the antiquities dealer, still held secrets about the broader network behind the theft, and whispers of another auction, a clandestine affair for London's underworld elite, reached his ears through his irregulars. "Watson," Holmes said, striding into our sitting room, his eyes alight with purpose, "tonight we infiltrate a den of vipers. Langley's arrest disrupted his plans, but his associates may yet attempt to auction lesser spoils from the Haverford fortune. We must confirm the extent of this syndicate." I glanced up from my morning paper, the chill of late autumn seeping through the window. Another auction. Surely they scatter after Langley's 6 capture. Holmes shook his head, donning a disguise, a false beard, and merchant's coat. "Reed is a stubborn master. The auction is set for a derelict theatre in Shoreditch, a perfect stage for illicit trade. You'll pose as a buyer, I'll be your broker. Lestrade has men ready, but we must act with precision." The Shoreditch Theatre, a crumbling relic of Victorian grandeur, stood shrouded in the evening's fog. Its faded marquee and boarded windows belied the activity within, where flickering lights betrayed the presence of shadowy figures. We entered through a side door, Holmes' forged invitation granting us passage past a surly doorman. Inside, the auditorium was transformed into a marketplace of stolen treasures, paintings, jewels, and artifacts displayed on makeshift tables, eyed by a motley crowd of collectors and criminals. Holmes, his voice lowered to a gruff timbre, mingled effortlessly, while I feigned interest in a jade statuette. "Keep your eyes sharp, Watson," he whispered. "Look for anyone connected to Langley or von Stahl." The auction began, conducted by a wiry man with a scarred cheek, Blackwood, the cracksman Thomas had named, now brazenly stepping into Langley's role. Among the lots was a set of gold ingots, unmistakably from the Haverford hoard we'd recovered at Traitor's Gate. My pulse quickened, Holmes' hand on my arm steadied me. "Patience," he murmured. "We need the ringleader." As bids flew, I noticed a figure in a hooded cloak near the stage, gesturing subtly to Blackwood. The figure's movements were precise, almost aristocratic. Could it be von Stahl, defying his expulsion? Holmes caught my glance and nodded imperceptibly, his eyes tracking the figure's every move. The bidding for the ingots reached a fever pitch when Holmes stood, his disguised voice booming. "I challenge the provenance of these goods. They are stolen from the Haverford estate, and I demand to know their source." The room froze. Blackwood's scar twitched, and the cloaked figure moved to retreat. Holmes signalled, and Lestrade's men stormed in, blocking exits. Chaos erupted. Bidders scattered. Tables overturned, but Holmes pursued the cloaked figure, weaving through the melee with Baritsu agility. I followed, revolver drawn, as the figure darted backstage. In the gloom of the theatre's wings, Holmes tackled the fugitive, ripping back the hood to reveal not von Stahl, but Clara, the young maid from Haverford Manor. Her face was defiant, tears streaking her cheeks. "Clara," I exclaimed, "you sit part of this?" Holmes held her firmly. "Explain yourself. You reported the phantom figure to deflect suspicion, didn't set you." Clara's defiance broke. "I had no choice. Langley threatened my family, debts they owed him. I passed him details of the vault's routine, thinking it just a job. But then Lord Archibald used me too, to plant the cowl in dust and mislead you. I didn't know about the fortune until the auction was planned." Holmes' expression softened, but his voice remained firm, and the cloaked figure in the gardens. "You're doing?" She nodded, sobbing. "To keep the curse story alive, as Archibald ordered. I never meant harm." Blackwood, now in Lestrade's custody, corroborated her tale under pressure, admitting he'd worked for Langley, but knew little of Archibald's deeper scheme. The ingots, it seemed, were a test to gauge the market before the syndicate dispersed. As we left the theatre, Clara in custody, but promised leniency for her cooperation, Holmes lit his pipe. "Intrigue within intrigue, Watson. Archibald sits betrayal, masked a wider net. Langley sits greed, von Stahl sits vendetta, and Clara sits coerced complicity. Yet the chain sits riddle, binds them all." The fog swallowed the theatre as we departed, but the case's threads were tightening. Clara's betrayal, born of desperation, was a stark reminder of the human cost in this game of greed and secrets. I sensed Holmes was nearing the heart of the mystery. But what final players awaited in the shadows? Chapter 11. Echoes of Deception. The air in 221B Baker Street was heavy with the scent of tobacco and the faint metallic tang of Holmes' chemical experiments as we returned from the Shoreditch Theatre. The chrysoberyl chain lay secure in its locked case, but the revelations of Clara's coerced betrayal and Lord Archibald's treachery had cast a new shadow over the case. Sherlock Holmes paced before the fire, his silhouette sharp against the flickering glow, his mind clearly wrestling with the tangled web of motives. "Watson," he said at last, pausing to tap his pipe against the mantel, "deception echoes through this affair like a refrain. Clara's confession confirms Archibald's orchestration, but the ease with which we've unravelled each layer troubles me. Our true adversary remains elusive, a puppet master who uses Langley, von Stahl, and even Archibald as pawns." I settled into my armchair, the weight of the night Sips events pressing on me. "You suspect someone else? But who?" We Sips accounted for the Manor Sips insiders and the auction Sips players. Holmes' eyes glinted. "Not entirely. The cowl in dust, the riddle card, the precise knowledge of the vault's lock all point to an intellect equal to my own. Someone with access to the Haverford secrets, yet removed from suspicion. We must revisit the Manor staff, particularly Mrs. Finch, the older maid. Her silence during our initial interviews was conspicuous." Determined to pursue this lead, we set out for Haverford Manor at dawn, the fog lifting to reveal a crisp autumn morning. The manor's grey stone seemed less imposing in daylight, but its air of secrecy lingered. Lady Eleanor greeted us, her face drawn with exhaustion but resolute. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she said, leading us to the drawing-room. "Clara Sips' arrest has shaken the household. I cannot believe she acted alone. Have you uncovered more?" Holmes' giddy gaze was piercing. "Lady Eleanor, summon Mrs. Finch. Her reticence may hold the key to this labyrinth." Mrs. Finch entered, her grey hair neatly pinned, her demeanour calm but guarded. Holmes wasted no time. "Mrs. Finch, you Sips served the Haverfords for 30 years. You know their secrets, perhaps better than they know themselves. What have you withheld about the chain Sips theft?" The maid Sit's composure faltered, her hands twisting in her apron. "I meant no harm, sir. I saw things, odd things, but I kept silent to protect the family." "Speak now," Holmes urged, his voice low but commanding. "The truth serves them better than silence." Mrs. Finch sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Years ago, I overheard Lord Archibald's father speak of the chain's riddle with a visitor, a scholar named Dr. Mortimer Crane. He was obsessed with the chain, said it held the key to a fortune tied to Ceylon's lost temples. After the old lord's death, Crane returned, posing as a historian. He dined here before the ball, asking about the vault. I thought him harmless, but now... Holmes' eyes narrowed. Crane, a name absent from the guest list. Describe him. Tall, gaunt, with a sharp beard and spectacles, she replied. He had a way of speaking. Erudite, but cold. I saw him linger near the vault sept's corridor during his visit. Holmes exchanged a glance with me. Dr. Mortimer Crane, an antiquarian with rumoured ties to black market relics. His absence from our inquiries suggests deliberate concealment. Lady Eleanor, have you any record of his visits? She nodded, retrieving a ledger from the study. Here an entry from 2 months ago. He requested access to our archives, claiming to research Ceylonese artifacts. Archibald dismissed him as eccentric. Eccentric, yet dangerous, Holmes mused. Crane likely planted the kaolin dust to implicate an industrial source, masking his own involvement. He used Archibald Sitt's greed and von Stahl Sitt's vendetta to orchestrate the theft, intending to claim the fortune for himself. We searched the manor for further clues, Holmes examining the vault once more. He found a hidden panel in the corridor, a false wall concealing a narrow passage to the gardens. Crane Sitt's entry point, he declared. He bypassed the lock entirely, using this to slip in and out undetected. Determined to confront Crane, Holmes dispatched a telegram to Lestrade requesting a trace on the scholar's whereabouts. Meanwhile, he studied the chain under his prism again, confirming the riddle's message. The fortune is secure, but Crane's knowledge of the riddle suggests he seeks more than gold, perhaps a relic of cultural significance tied to his Ceylonese obsession. By evening, Lestrade's reply arrived. Crane had been spotted at a dockside tavern, a known haunt for smugglers. We ventured there, the Thames stench mingling with the fog. Inside, Crane sat alone, his gaunt frame unmistakable, poring over a map. Holmes approached, his voice icy. Dr. Crane, your deception ends here. The chrysoberyl chain has revealed its secrets, and your role as its puppet master is exposed. Crane's eyes flickered with surprise, then defiance. Holmes, you stut too late. The fortune stut's true value lies not in gold, but in a relic hidden with it, a sacred tablet from a Ceylonese temple. I still have it, with or without the chain. He bolted, but Holmes was faster, pinning him against a table. Lestrade's men, waiting outside, took Crane into custody. His map revealed a plan to excavate another site near the Thames, seeking the tablet he believed the riddle concealed. As we returned to Baker Street, Holmes lit his pipe, reflective. Deception echoes. Watson, but truth resounds. Crane Sepp's ambition was his undoing, yet the tablet Sepp's mystery lingers. We sipped not seen the last of this affair. The case layers peeled back, revealing a scholar's obsession beneath the greed. But as the fire crackled, I sensed Holmes' mind already probing the next shadow. Chapter 12. The Midnight Revelation. The fire at 221B Baker Street burned low, casting long shadows across the room as midnight approached. Sherlock Holmes sat in his armchair, the chrysoberyl chain draped across a velvet cloth on the table before him, its gems glinting like watchful eyes. I had grown accustomed to his silences, but tonight's was profound, his brow furrowed as if wrestling with an invisible foe. The arrest of Dr. Mortimer Crane had tightened the noose around the conspiracy, yet Holmes' restlessness betrayed an unresolved thread. "Watson," he said at last, his voice low, "we have uncovered the players, Archibald's betrayal, von Stahl's vendetta, Langley's greed, Clara's coercion, and Crane's obsession. Yet the riddle's full purpose eludes me. Why risk so much for a tablet, unless it holds a power beyond mere antiquity?" I leaned forward, the chill of the night seeping through the windows. "You suspect the tablet is more than a relic? A political weapon, perhaps?" Holmes nodded, rising to pace. "Precisely. Crane's map pointed to a secondary site near the Thames Fleet confluence, but his notes mentioned a key to dominion. The tablet may bear inscriptions, perhaps a treaty, or claim from Ceylon's colonial era that could stir unrest or leverage diplomatic power. We must examine the chain once more." He retrieved his prism and lantern, angling light through the chrysoberyl gems. The filigree's etchings glowed, reiterating the riddle. Beneath the lion's gaze, where rivers meet, the Haverford fortune lies concealed. Seek the stone that roars, in silence deep, where Thames and Fleet entwine their sleep. Holmes paused, his eyes narrowing. "The riddle is twofold. We found the fortune, but the sea stone that roars ceased may refer to the tablet itself, hidden separately. The Lion's Cease gaze at Traitor Cease Gate was a starting point, but the Fleet ceased underground path suggests a deeper vault." He spread a map of London, tracing the buried Fleet River Styx course. "Here, near Farringdon, the Fleet flows beneath a disused chapel, once a Haverford holding. If Reginald hid the tablet, it would be there, protected by the same optical trick as the chain." Determined to act, Holmes summoned Lady Eleanor by urgent telegram, requesting any family records of the chapel. She arrived within the hour, her face pale but resolute, carrying a dusty ledger. "This mentions a chapel gifted to the church in 1620 after Reginald's death," she said. "It speaks of a sanctuary for the lion's secret, but I thought it metaphorical." Holmes' sixth eyes gleamed. "Nothing in this case is mere metaphor. Watson, we go at once." Under the cover of night, we ventured to Farringdon, the city silent save for the distant clatter of a late hansom. The chapel, a crumbling relic squeezed between warehouses, was boarded shut, its stained glass cracked but intact. Holmes forced the door with his tools, and we entered, our lanterns casting eerie patterns across pews coated in dust. The altar was our focus, a slab of stone carved with a faint lion motif, its eyes hollowed as if meant to hold something. Holmes placed a chrysoberyl gem from the chain into one socket, and a beam of lantern light refracted through it, projecting a pattern onto the floor, a map-like outline of intersecting lines. "The river's confluence," Holmes murmured. He pressed the outline spot, and a hidden panel clicked open, revealing a narrow stair descending into darkness. The chamber below was small, its walls etched with Ceylonese symbols. At its center lay a stone tablet, no larger than a book, inscribed with intricate script and sealed in wax. Holmes lifted it carefully, his fingers tracing the text. Old Tamil, mixed with colonial Dutch, a treaty, Watson, between a Ceylonese chieftain and a Dutch trader, claiming rights to a spice route. In the wrong hands, this could fuel colonial disputes or rally nationalist fervor. I marveled at the find. Crane wanted this to destabilize British-Prussian relations, didn't he? Holmes nodded, and Archibald, knowingly or not, played into it by staging the theft to flush out von Stahl. The tablet's 6 exposure would have enriched Crane while disgracing the Haverfords. We returned to Baker Street with the tablet, Holmes locking it beside the chain. "This must be secured with the Foreign Office," he said. "Its power lies in secrecy, not display." As the clock struck 2, Holmes sat back, his face illuminated by the dying fire. "The midnight revelation, Watson, is that truth is a fragile thing, guarded by riddles and betrayed by ambition. We slept thwarted, Crane, but the tablet scepter's shadow looms." Exhausted but exhilarated, I sensed the case nearing its climax. Yet Holmes' gaze, fixed on the chain, hinted at one final twist waiting in the fog. Chapter 13. The Final Confrontation. The first light of dawn barely pierced the fog that clung to Baker Street as Sherlock Holmes prepared for what he termed the final act of the chrysoberial chain affair. The recovered tablet and chain lay secure in a locked case, destined for the Foreign Office, but Holmes' restless demeanour suggested the case was not yet closed. Over a hurried breakfast, he outlined his plan, his voice sharp with urgency. "Watson," he said, spearing a piece of toast with uncharacteristic vigour, "Crane's arrest and the tablet's recovery have disrupted the syndicate, but a mastermind of his caliber does not act alone." His map referenced a final exchange, a meeting to secure the tablet's secrets before they were lost. "We must intercept this rendezvous." I frowned, setting down my coffee. "But Crane is in custody, and von Stahl is disgraced. Who remains to meet?" Holmes' eyes glinted. A shadow player, one who orchestrated the theft's complexity to remain unseen. The kaolin dust, the riddle card, the chapel's hidden vault, all bear the mark of a mind that thrives on misdirection. I suspect a figure from the Haverford past, perhaps tied to the original theft in Ceylon. A telegram from Lestrade confirmed a lead. Crane had confessed to a meeting at Blackfriars Bridge at noon, where an unknown contact would collect a copy of the tablet's inscriptions. Holmes, suspecting a trap, insisted we act swiftly. We donned disguises, Holmes as a dockworker, myself as a newspaper vendor, to blend into the bustling riverside crowd. Blackfriars Bridge was alive with the clamour of merchants and labourers, the Thames below a murky ribbon under the midday haze. Holmes positioned us near the bridge's northern end, his eyes scanning the throng. "Look for someone out of place," he whispered. "A glance too sharp, a step too deliberate." Minutes ticked by, the crowd a blur of top hats and shawls. Then a figure caught my eye. A woman veiled and dressed in widow's black, lingering near the bridge's railing. Her posture was too composed, her gloved hands clutching a small satchel with unnatural care. I nudged Holmes, who nodded subtly. "She fits the profile," he murmured. "Follow, but keep your distance." We trailed her as she moved south, weaving through the crowd with practiced ease. Near a riverside warehouse, she paused, glancing about before slipping inside. Holmes signalled for Lestrade's men, stationed nearby, to surround the building. We entered through a side door, the air thick with the scent of tar and damp wood. Inside, the woman stood in a dimly lit corner, facing a man whose face was obscured by a scarf. Blackwood, the cracksman, evidently freed or never fully detained. The woman spoke, her voice low but clear, with a faint accent I couldn't place. Crane promised they'd secure our claim. Holmes stepped forward, shedding his disguise. "Your claim ends here, madam. The tablet is with the Foreign Office, and your conspiracy is exposed." The woman whirled, her veil slipping to reveal a face both striking and severe. Lady Margaret Haverford, a distant cousin of Lord Archibald, long thought estranged. Blackwood cursed, reaching for a knife, but Lestrade's men swarmed, pinning him to the ground. "Lady Margaret," Holmes said, his voice cold, "you Sepps played a long game. The mastermind behind Crane, orchestrating the theft to reclaim a fortune you believe rightfully yours." She straightened, unrepentant. "Reginald Haverford stole that wealth from my ancestors' Cit allies in Ceylon. The tablet proves it, a treaty granting my family Cit's line rights to the spice trade. Archibald's greed blinded him, but I used him, Von Stahl and Crane, to recover what was ours." Holmes shook his head. "Your ambition turned allies into pawns. The Kale Lindust was your touch. Wasn't Cit it? A nod to your family Cit's pottery trade, meant to mislead us." She smirked faintly. "A flourish, Mr. Holmes. You Cit clever, but not infallible." The confrontation was brief, but intense. Lady Margaret, realizing escape was futile, surrendered her satchel, which contained a forged copy of the tablet's inscriptions. Lestrade took her into custody, her defiance unbroken even as she was led away. As we emerged onto the bridge, the fog lifting to reveal a clear sky, Holmes lit his pipe. "The final confrontation, Watson, reveals the heart of deception. Lady Margaret wove a tapestry of lies, using family history to justify theft, yet justice prevails." The Thames flowed on, indifferent to the drama. The chain's riddle, the tablet's secret, and the Haverford legacy were secure. But I knew Holmes' mind was already turning to the next challenge, ever drawn to the shadows of London's mysteries. Chapter 14. The Shocking Twist. The streets of London were quiet as we returned to 221B Baker Street, the weight of Lady Margaret's arrest settling over us like the fading fog. The chrysoberyl chain and the ancient tablet were now locked in a secure vault at the Foreign Office, their secrets guarded from further exploitation. Yet Sherlock Holmes' demeanor remained taut, his sharp eyes restless as he sat by the fire, the glow casting stark shadows across his angular face. "Watson," he said abruptly, breaking a long silence, "the pieces of this puzzle align too neatly. Lady Margaret's confession, while compelling, lacks the depth of true mastery. Her role as the orchestrator feels incomplete. A mind capable of manipulating Archibald, Von Stahl, Crane, and Blackwood would not surrender so readily." I paused, my pen hovering over my notebook. "You suspect another layer? But we dismantled the syndicate. Every player is accounted for." Holmes rose, pacing with a ferocity that belied his calm tone. "Every player we see, the cowlin dust, the riddle card's calligraphy, the chapel's hidden vault, these bespeak a precision beyond Margaret's scope. She claimed ancestral rights, yet her knowledge of the tablet's exact location suggests a source, an informant or mentor, who remains in the shadows." He retrieved the chain from its case, holding it to the lamplight. The chrysoberyl gems shimmered, their cat's eye effect, almost mocking. The riddle, "Seek the stone that roars, in silence deep," was solved, yet its phrasing haunts me. Why silence deep? It implies a secret buried beyond the tablet, one we've overlooked. A knock at the door startled us. Mrs. Hudson entered, bearing a sealed letter delivered by a street urchin. Holmes tore it open, his eyes scanning the elegant script. "Curious," he murmured, passing it to me. The note was brief, chilling in its clarity. "The chain binds, Mr. Holmes, but the true riddle is mine. Seek the silent lion in the heart of the city, or the Haverford's sick shame will be exposed." The architect. I felt a chill. The architect? A new player? Holmes' sixth lips curled in a rare grim smile. Not new, Watson, hidden. The architect has guided this affair from the start, using Margaret as a front. The silent line sict points to a final clue, likely near the city centre, perhaps the lion statues at Trafalgar Square. With no time to waste, we ventured into the night, the city's pulse muted under a starless sky. Trafalgar Square was deserted, its fountains glinting faintly under gaslight. Holmes approached the 4 bronze lions guarding Nelson's column, his lantern sweeping their bases. At the 3rd lion, he paused, tracing a faint inscription carved into the plinth, "In silence, truth, in truth, ruin." "A variation of the riddle," he muttered. He pressed the inscribed stone, and a small compartment clicked open, revealing a rolled parchment. Unfurling it, we found a detailed confession, written in the same hand as the riddle card. "I, Elias Haverford, cousin to Reginald, betrayed the chieftain's trust in Ceylon, stealing the chain and tablet to secure our wealth. The curse is my guilt, hidden here to protect my kin. Forgive me." Holmes' eyes blazed. Elias Haverford, Reginald Stist's confidant, presumed dead in 1605. He didn't die, he vanished, orchestrating the curse myth to shield the family. His descendant, the architect, lives, manipulating this affair to protect or expose the Haverford shame. As we stood in the square, a figure emerged from the shadows, an elderly man, stooped but with eyes sharp as steel. "Well done, Mr. Holmes," he said, his voice cultured yet cold. "I am Elias Haverford the architect. My ancestors' sin is my burden. I used Margaret to recover the tablet, hoping to bury our shame forever." Holmes stepped closer, unflinching. "And the theft? The syndicate?" "A test," Elias replied, "to see if the Haverfords deserved redemption. Giuseppe proven their greed. Archibald, Margaret, but Giuseppe also preserved their legacy. The tablet secret dies with me." He produced a vial, swallowing its contents before Holmes could react. "Poison," Elias whispered, collapsing. "The silent lion claims its own." Holmes knelt, checking his pulse, but it was too late. Elias Haverford IV, the architect, was dead, his final act sealing the riddle's truth. Lestrade, summoned by a passing constable, arrived to handle the aftermath. As we walked away, Holmes was silent, his mind grappling with the twist. "A shocking end, Watson," he said at last. "The architect played his game to the grave, protecting a legacy through sacrifice. The Haverfords are free, but at what cost?" The square's lions stared silently, guardians of a truth now buried forever. Chapter 15. Resolution and Reflections. The aftermath of Elias Haverford IV's dramatic demise in Trafalgar Square left a hush over Baker Street as Sherlock Holmes and I returned to our lodgings. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in hues of amber and grey, but the weight of the case lingered like a shadow. The chrysoberial chain and its accompanying tablet were now permanently secured with the Foreign Office, their secrets deemed too volatile for public knowledge. Lady Eleanor, the sole untainted Haverford, had vowed to restore her family's honour with the recovered fortune, distancing herself from the greed and betrayal that had ensnared her kin. In our sitting room, Holmes reclined in his armchair, his violin resting across his lap, though he made no move to play. The fire crackled softly, and I, penning the final notes of this extraordinary affair, felt compelled to break the silence. "Holmes," I ventured, "the architect's sacrifice, was it truly necessary? Could we have persuaded him to surrender the truth without such a drastic end?" Holmes' grey eyes, usually so piercing, softened with a rare trace of melancholy. Watson, Elias Haverford IV, bore the weight of centuries-old guilt. His ancestors' betrayal in Ceylon set this chain of events in motion, and he saw himself as its final guardian. His death was not our failure, but his choice, a checkmate in a game he played alone. I nodded, reflecting on the labyrinthine plot, the riddle, the curse, the tablet. It was all a facade to protect a shameful truth, yet you unravelled it, as always. Holmes gave a faint smile, not without cost. The architect anticipated my moves, using Margaret, Archibald, and Crane as pawns to test the Haverford's worthiness. The cowl in dust, the riddle card, the hidden chapel vault, all were his design, crafted to draw us to the truth while shielding his identity until the end. He rose, crossing to the window where the morning light banished the last wisps of fog. Consider the chain itself, Watson. Its gems refracting light to reveal the riddle symbolize truth hidden in plain sight. Elias ensured its legacy endured, even as he took its darkest secret to the grave. I closed my notebook, the case's resolution both satisfying and sobering. And Lady Eleanor, will the Haverfords recover from this scandal? They will, Holmes replied. Eleanor Sit's integrity contrasts her brother Sit's greed. The fortune will rebuild their estate, and the tablet Sit's diplomatic implications are now Britain Sit's to manage. As for von Stahl, his expulsion is permanent. Prussia will not risk further disgrace. A knock at the door heralded Mrs. Hudson with a letter from Lady Eleanor expressing gratitude and enclosing a generous cheque, which Holmes promptly waved away. Keep it for your memoirs, Watson. The thrill of the chase is reward enough. As I set the cheque aside, I marvelled at Holmes' detachment from material gain. The chrysoberyl chain had bound a family's fate, unravelled a centuries-old mystery, and exposed human frailty in all its forms. Yet for Holmes, it was merely another thread in the tapestry of London's endless enigmas. Thus concluded the adventure of the chrysoberyl chain, a tale of riddles, betrayal, and redemption that tested even Sherlock Holmes' unparalleled intellect. From the fog-laden streets of London to the hidden vaults beneath its ancient stones, the case revealed truths as dazzling and perilous as the gems themselves. As Holmes returned to his violin, playing a soft melody that seemed to echo the case's bittersweet resolution, I knew this story would linger in my chronicles, a testament to the power of truth over deception. What a journey through the shadows of Victorian London! Where were you gripped by this thrilling finale, curled up in a cozy cafe, braving the night in a bustling city, or somewhere far across the seas? Share your location and your favorite twist from this tale in the comments below. Don't miss out on more Sherlockian adventures. Subscribe to our channel now and join the chase for the next mystery.